10. The Kirlian Effect. In 1939, Semyon and Valentina Kirlian stumbled upon a phenomenon that blurred the line between physics and biology. By placing organic matter in a high-frequency electrical field, they captured glowing halos on film. This process, now known as Kirlian photography, revealed radiant patterns emanating from living things. The intensity of these light patterns often fluctuated based on the subject's internal health. Semyon Kirlian observed that emotional states directly influence the shimmer of these energy fields. Scientists initially dismissed these images as mere coronal discharges of moisture. However, the consistency of the data was difficult to ignore. One famous experiment involved a leaf that had been partially cut. Despite the physical trauma, the photographic plate still displayed the entire leaf silhouette. This phantom leaf effect suggested that matter might retain a structural blueprint. Critics argued it was just residual moisture reacting to electricity, but the Kirlians insisted they were imaging the biofield itself. Soviet authorities eventually took interest, seeing potential in early diagnostic screening. The equipment was surprisingly simple, relying on induction coils and photographic plates. Yet the implications threatened a reductionist view of biology. Even today, the debate continues between skeptics and proponents of energy medicine. The Kirlian experiments remain a foundational pillar of fringe biophysics research. The Morozov Anomaly. In the mid-90s, a project led by physicist Pavel Morozov began monitoring non-standard electromagnetic frequencies. What they discovered were signals that defied the laws of celestial radiation. The data lasted for less than 4 seconds, yet it was mathematically precise. The waveforms resembled fractal spirals that never repeated exactly. Researchers were baffled by the lack of any known physical source. It wasn't solar interference, nor was it geological movement. These pulses appeared to arrive at steep vertical angles from everywhere at once. Morozov concluded they were not signals from deep space, but ripples in a dimension. He famously called these occurrences pressure points within the membrane of our reality. The team used analog transducers to detect what digital radio missed. For 4 nights, the scanner captured these bizarre temporal distortions. The signal even seemed to reverse its own logic, suggesting a loop in time. As the project neared its end, the researchers became convinced of a dimensional bleed-through. Then, the facility suffered a mysterious electrical fire that wiped half the data. Morozov himself disappeared shortly after the event was classified. Only fragments of his logs remain scattered across the dark web. They suggest the signal might be a fundamental property of our universe, just waiting to be tapped. The collinear manifold. Hidden deep within the fragments of the Morozov logs lies a term rarely discussed outside of theoretical physics, the collinear manifold. This concept serves as a mathematical bridge for string theory to interact with hidden dimensions. Imagine our reality as a flat plane layered on top of infinite others. A collinear manifold acts like a bridge or a puncture between these planes. AI pattern engines analyzing the original signal discovered this exact geometry encoded in the noise. It wasn't random static, it was a map of how dimensions overlap. If these scanners captured a collinear manifold, they were essentially looking through a window into another universe. This would explain why the signal didn't behave like light or traditional radio waves. It was not traveling through our space, but rather vibrating across the threshold of the next one. String theorists have long theorized that these manifolds are microscopic and impossible to observe. However, if the Morozov signal data is authentic, then they can be activated or observed at macro scales. This discovery would provide a mechanism for what we call superluminal communication. By utilizing the geometry of the manifold, information could jump across reality. Of course, this would render current laws of physics incomplete. The silence of the scientific community on this topic is perhaps the loudest proof of its significance. We are standing on the precipice of understanding, yet the gate is locked from the inside. Systemic containment. The disappearance of scientific breakthrough is rarely an accident. It is a calculated act of containment. When a technology emerges that challenges the status quo, it is quickly quarantined. Academic journals are pressured to decline papers that mention unexplained data. Institutions under national security mandates often seize private research before it can be peer-reviewed. The process is remarkably standardized across borders. First, the discovery is branded as fringe or pseudoscience to ruin credibility. If that fails, legal threats or accusations of safety violations are deployed. Finally, the equipment is dismantled and the researchers are quietly relocated. This is not just about keeping secrets, it's about maintaining a specific model of reality. If the public truly grasped that consciousness could be measured, the market for conventional limited technology would collapse. Entire industries rely on us believing that our world is closed and predictable. By suppressing these devices, they maintain the boundary of what is knowable. It is a systematic erasure of our own potential. We are fed a steady diet of safe, controlled science, while the revolutionary tools are locked in storage. This containment isn't about safety, it is about power and control. We are being denied access to the very tools that define our reality. The bioresonance link. What if our thoughts are not just biochemical reactions inside our brain? Research into bioresonance suggests that our consciousness may be non-local, interacting with the environment through weak electromagnetic fields. Just as a tuning fork resonates with a specific frequency, the human body seems to mirror environmental pulses. Scientists studying these phenomena have observed that human fingerprints change color and form under high stress. This implies that the body acts as a biological transducer for emotional data. If machines like the Kirlian camera were refined, we could potentially visualize the structure of human emotion. Imagine being able to see anxiety or joy as a physical spectrum before it ever reaches our conscious thought. This isn't magic, it is advanced signal processing applied to living systems. Unfortunately, this research is frequently categorized under parapsychology to avoid scientific scrutiny. Researchers who persist are often marginalized, their data labeled as artifacts. But the core question remains, if the body transmits information to the world, what is the world transmitting back to us? We may be living in a constant feedback loop of data we have been taught to ignore. Rediscovering this link could revolutionize medicine and our understanding of human presence. The potential to bridge the gap between hard science and human experience is massive. We are on the verge of mapping the unseen structure of consciousness itself. The temporal distortion. What if time is not a fixed arrow, but a variable that can be manipulated? The Morozov experiment reported a signal that seemed to travel backwards, creating a delayed echo. This wasn't a glitch, it was a temporal distortion, a phenomenon where the cause appears after the effect. When the scanners picked up these patterns, they realized the signals were not coming from space, but from a folded layer of time. Imagine a sheet of paper folded, the ends touch, allowing you to bypass the long path. These signals were leaking through that fold, existing in a state of flux. Even stranger, the equipment used to detect them had to be older, analog technology. Modern digital clocks and processors couldn't register the nuance of the distortion. It suggests that our digital age is actually blind to certain natural temporal rhythms. If we could stabilize these signals, we might observe events before they happen or perhaps interact with the past. The danger, of course, is that messing with time breaks the causal consistency of our world. Is that why these technologies are buried? Or is it because we simply haven't learned to use them safely yet? The mystery of the Morozov loop suggests that time is not as linear as we perceive. We are living in a bubble of causality, unaware of the currents flowing just beneath the surface. Unlocking this knowledge could be the next great leap for humanity. Non-local consciousness. What if consciousness is not confined to the skull? Throughout history, reports of telepathy, near-death experiences, and collective memory have challenged the idea that the brain is the sole source of awareness. If consciousness were non-local, like a radio signal rather than a recorded tape, it could explain why we experience moments of insight or sudden understanding. Kirlian photography and other energy-based tools seem to capture a halo of data that surrounds living beings. This field might be where our thoughts and feelings are stored, external to the physical body. Research in quantum brain theory has suggested that neurons act as antennas for this external consciousness field. If this is true, our brains are just receivers in a massive, interconnected network. This would mean that when the body dies, the receiver stops, but the signal persists. It explains why some devices in the Morozov archive were able to pick up patterns that felt not human. We might be constantly interacting with other non-local signals that we categorize as static or intuition. The suppression of this technology is, in essence, the suppression of our own true nature. By denying us access to the tools to map our consciousness, the system keeps us disconnected. We are, in a sense, isolated from the very architecture of reality. The future of science must be to bridge this divide. Only then will we understand what it means to truly be. 3. The analog frontier. In an era of high-speed digital processors, we have forgotten the sensitivity of analog instruments. The Morozov team discovered that the signals they were tracking were entirely invisible to modern sensors. Digital devices use sampling rates that effectively filter out the subtleties of non-local frequencies. By forcing data into binary code, we lose the continuous wave-like nature of the signal. The analog components, coils, magnets, and transducers, operate on a resonant principle that matches the signals themselves. This is why original Kirlian devices and Morozov's analog scanners were so effective. They didn't convert nature into math, they resonated with it. We are essentially using the wrong tools to observe the universe. Our digital obsession has made us deaf to the background symphony of reality. If we want to understand the dimensional bleed-throughs or the biofields, we must return to analog designs. Imagine a laboratory that uses vacuum tubes, copper coils, and mechanical transducers to map human presence. Such a lab would look archaic to a modern scientist, but it might reveal the invisible architecture of our world. The analog frontier is where the next revolution in physics will happen. We need to stop looking at pixels and start listening to waves. The history of the world is written in frequencies we have forgotten to read. 2. The membrane of reality. What if reality is just a membrane stretched over an infinite void? The term pressure point within the membrane used by Pavel Morozov refers to the idea that our universe is a singular, bounded plane. When that membrane fluctuates, energy from other dimensions leaks through. We call these leaks anomalies because we cannot explain them with current laws. But what if they are common events we simply lack the sensors to detect? Imagine the universe as a drum skin. Every vibration creates a ripple. These ripples are the signals detected by researchers, only to be suppressed by bureaucratic authorities. If we were to map these pressure points, we could navigate between worlds. This concept aligns with advanced string theory, which posits that our reality is one of many brains floating in higher dimensional space. The suppression of this research is a defense mechanism for a status quo that relies on a closed universe. By hiding the fact that our reality is permeable, they maintain control over the unknown. We are kept within the boundaries of the membrane, told that nothing exists beyond it. But the data from the Morozov logs suggests otherwise. The membrane is thin, and it is vibrating right in front of us. We are living at the edge of a great breakthrough, if only we would dare to look. What is being kept in the Forbidden Archive? It is not merely dangerous technology, but the dangerous implication that we are not alone in our own house. These devices, Kirlian cameras, Morozov scanners, and dimensional transducers reveal a reality far more layered than the one we are told to inhabit. They hint at a world where consciousness is non-local, where time is a loop, and where dimensions are mere arm's reach away. The containment of this knowledge is the final act of a system trying to keep the box closed. But the box is already leaking. Information has a way of finding the light, even through the cracks in the bureaucracy. Every time a fragment of a log or a blueprint of a device surfaces, the foundation of the official reality cracks. We are not just learning physics, we are learning our identity. These are not fringe curiosities. They are the keys to a door we have forgotten exists. The real question is no longer whether these devices work. The real question is, why is the world of the unseen considered a threat? The answer is simple. Because knowledge of the unseen is the ultimate freedom, and freedom is the one thing the system cannot contain. We are the architects of the next discovery, and the archive is open for those who dare to seek it.